I hate all of the SEO apps with AI right now. All of them are like, find out how you appear in ChatGPT.
You had talked about the fact that you wanted to build a tool that would do things that current brain-dead AI SEO tools don't do well, right? What is the chasm there between what a human does and what these tools are trying to do that you want to fix? What's the glitch?
I think that there's just such a gap between...
Today's guest is Rebekah Edwards. She is the founder and CEO of Clara, an agency helping businesses in health and wellness, e-commerce, and thought leadership grow through organic SEO and content strategy. She's all about helping brands get found by the people already searching for them.
A lot of our clients want to understand how to appear in AI more often, but also I want to know when I am appearing in AI searches already. And then with a combination of like Google Analytics and Looker Studio, we just started developing ways to like show clients, hey, you had this many hits this month from ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and whatever. I use ChatGPT quite a lot at this point for a lot of like inspiration. My favorite thing to do right now is deep research because I have found that it saves me so much time and people don't know that it exists. It's going to give you this like amazing research breakdown with all of the links and citing its sources, which is like the thing that people hate that ChatGPT doesn't always do.
And there's a thing, are you familiar with the concept of model context protocol?
No.
Okay, well, strap in. We're going to go for a ride. This is a very interesting potential future. All right, everybody, welcome back to the AI for Business Owners podcast. I am your host, Jeff Torello. With me today, Rebekah Edwards. Rebekah, please tell everybody who you are.
I own a small, or boutique, I guess is a better word, marketing agency focused on content-led SEO. So in a nutshell, we write a lot of long-form content and help B2C businesses get discovered by their customers on Google. So that's kind of the point of what we do. We've been doing that since February of 2019. So we have celebrated 6 years and going strong. I also dabble in a little bit of book-related stuff, and I've got plans on the horizon to launch a book publishing house in January of next year. But for right now, my day job is still working mostly in like marketing and SEO.
You say you dabble in book-related stuff. You're authoring? Is that what you mean?
I have started my first book that I do want to write, which is just kind of right now a fun side project. But I also like run a Bookstagram book talk account and review books in my spare time. You know, all the spare time.
Yeah,
right?
All the time when we're not doing the other 4 jobs that we all have, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Book talk. All right, so while we're here, what's your favorite book?
My favorite standalone book is Project Hail Mary, which is about to be made into a film, and I'm so scared that they're going to mess it up. I'm so scared because it's such a good book.
Well, they did a good job with The Martian. You shouldn't think too...
That's true. The Martian movie was like an incredible adaptation.
Yeah,
like really happy about it. I do a
accurate
podcast with my family reviewing these. So we're all like really in love with the Project Hail Mary, but also my favorite series, Dungeon Crawler Carl. If you haven't read it, you are missing out.
Yeah,
it
actually,
is amazing.
When we first chatted, you mentioned that you offer that often. I'm glad to see that you're consistent with it. That's great.
I'm very it's so good.
From a series perspective, I probably would recommend the Contact series about the culture, basically from it's the big aquamarine book in the corner there, right?
I love it. I haven't read it, so
that would be from my perspective, I love the world building that's in there. So if you're going to start with that, the first book is called Consider Phlebas. Phlebas is spelled Phlebas. Yeah, because we need to be fun. But the culture is an amazing series, and I'm a fan. Sadly, Ian's no longer around. But anyway, all right. Well, theoretically, we're supposed to talk about AI and not books. Although I could talk about books forever. So.
We can talk about AI and books, which is really spicy. But we can get there later.
We could talk about how you can use AI to write a book. And when I say that,
whether or not you should.
Well, right. Well, what I'm getting to is in this particular context, using it, not having it, as I think AI generated slop is exactly how it's labeled. But I think there is some very interesting creativity enhancing components to using an AI prompted correctly and giving you.
I agree with that.
Some cool stuff. Also, you can ask it for a very outlandish, weird, creative scenario, and then from there, write your own.
Oh, yeah.
details and stuff. So there's a lot of ways to use it that aren't, running into the line of all the stuff on Amazon that's clearly written by a non-human.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right, so let's circle back around. Tell me where you are in the world of your AI journey, from you used ChatGPT to, you're writing all your own applications, or some variant in the middle there.
So I'm definitely not like a pro, would kind of like to be though. I started using a tool a while back. This was like before ChatGPT was out, but they were using GPT-3 to generate basically suggested topics and keywords around the topics we write about for clients. So it's all SEO focused. And instead of just using like some of the same algorithmic ideas of like, oh, here's what to talk about, they actually use GPT-3. The product's name is called ClearScope. And they use GPT-3 to generate like relevant questions and related topics and keywords. That's basically it. So that was my first foray into AI. I use ChatGPT quite a lot at this point for a lot of like inspiration. My favorite thing to do right now is deep research, because I have found that it saves me so much time, and people don't know that it exists. Like
get into
people
it.
that know ChatGPT.
Right.
So
explain it.
When you use the deep research feature, you basically say, hey, I want you to do a deep dive into XYZ. So for example, I was researching for a book and I was considering whether or not I wanted it to be modern day or in around 1985. And so I was just curious. So I used deep research and I said, give me like a rundown of all of the big pop culture stuff and major events that somebody living in the year 1985 would understand. And so it'll ask you a couple of additional prompts just to clarify. And I think I said something about, this is for book research, focus on this type of pop culture, whatever. And it's a lot longer than a normal prompt. It takes like 5 to 20 minutes or so, depending on what you're doing. And it's going to give you this like amazing research breakdown with all of the links and citing its sources, which is like the thing that people hate that ChatGPT doesn't always do. And it's been amazing. I've used it for client research. We work for clients that do like health and wellness related content. And it's a great feature to use if you know how to prompt it for finding out like, hey, what are the most emerging like cutting edge studies in science related to like heart health. And so then it'll do all this research and then it'll give you the links to all of the NIH studies and stuff. And so I use it all the time for that. I also have been using search functionality to do some like basically just testing for clients. A lot of our clients want to understand how to appear in AI more often, but also I want to know when I am appearing in AI searches already.
Yeah.
So I do some manual testing through that. And then with a combination of like Google Analytics and Looker Studio, we like have it's not a ton, but we just started developing ways to like show clients, hey, you had this many hits this month from ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude and whatever. I would say I would love to like get a little deeper into better prompt engineering, but I'm considering a couple of other SEO tools. None of them are good yet. The AI ones, I did start the research process on creating my own, like a competitor to things like ClearScope. And I would love to develop something that's like your writing assistant for writing SEO content. So I would love to get into some of like how to use an API and like actually build an app through that. I hate all of the SEO apps with AI right now. Like all of them are like, oh, find out how you appear in ChatGPT. And all of them use prompts that are just the same kinds of terms that people in my industry have used forever, which is not actually helpful because that's not how people use chat searches. Like they just don't do that same thing. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity in the market. It just kind of depends on if I'm able to implement technically what works. So
quite a number of times in there how important prompting is, and brought up prompt engineering. You specifically said deep research is great if you prompt it right. What is your version of prompting it right versus not prompting it right?
So I wish I had like a good technical outline of like what I do, but I have always been a pretty good communicator and I just lean on that a lot. And so I reread over what I ask and make sure that I'm being specific, not repetitive, and not using terms that could be confusing. So like I just write in simple sentences and I try to think conversationally, because I think sometimes, especially people who come from like the SEO industry that I've been in, when you come from my industry, it's really tempting to use as few words as possible because that's how we learned to use Google search. But in ChatGPT and other prompting, like for other apps, it's so important to use it conversationally because that's how it will understand you better. So I try to do all of that as precisely as I can.
Let me give you an analogy that is not going to be technically accurate for anyone who's listening and thinking it's technically accurate. But let me try and give you an analogy that gives you a bit of a mental image and sort of explains why prompt engineering is the key to just about everything. This phrase is actually going away in AI parlance. It's becoming context engineering, but we'll worry about that later. But here's I'm just going to give you a simple example. But what I want you to think about is, let's say, 100 individual lamps, bulbs, okay, laying on a flat surface, all wired together.
Okay.
This is a contrived example, but I want to try and get across what I'm trying to get across. So if I said to the LLM from a prompt perspective, what are bats made of? What would happen is, by the way, this imagery of 100 lamps on a table is a neural network, okay? And certain lamps turn on based on what are bats made of.
Sure.
Certain lamps turn off. One of the lamps that turns on is bat, mammal, wings, fur. Okay?
Yep.
Because nothing in the prompt turned off that lamp. And that, again, it's a contrived example, but I want to make the point. That could lead to your answer being bats are made out of fur and wings and blood. If, on the other hand, you said, what are American baseball bats not made out of synthetic or metal materials made from? Now what you think of that table, there's a whole bunch of lamps that turned on that didn't turn on before, and a whole bunch that stayed dark, including the one about bats and mammals. Because I provided enough context to negate all those weird options. Those weird options are what people refer to as hallucinations. So the way I tend to phrase this for folks when I'm talking, without a lot of detail, Google has trained us for 25 plus years to use the least number of words necessary because we're looking at keyword searching, but that's not what
And they'll figure
LLMs
out what you mean.
Right. But what you'll end up with is I have these 5 keywords. Let's just be really clear. If you typed a full sentence into Google, it ignores the words with 4 letters or less because they're irrelevant to keyword searching, right?
Yeah.
But the LLM doesn't. The LLM wants as much flowery, descriptive prose as you can give it because you're turning on more lamps to get the neural network to see what you're asking in more detail.
Yeah.
Right? So this is kind of the art of prompt engineering and what eventually now is turning into context engineering, because in the realm of a large language model, context is everything. I gave you this example about what are bats made of. As a human, you would probably infer I meant baseball bat.
Sure. Honestly, first thing I thought about was mammals. And I was like, that's a weird question. And then I realized you meant baseball bat.
See, and here's the thing. I did it on purpose because there wasn't enough context. And we talk all the time informally about context clues with respect to interpreting the person's demeanor, behavior, intent, right? Like if I look at you and smile and make a cute little comment and like make a joke or tease you, you probably infer, oh, he's just being silly. And maybe you think I'm a goofy boomer, but whatever, right? Okay, fine. But if I have an angry face on and I say the same phrase, you're going to be like, you're an idiot. And it's all context related. But the LLM can't see you yet.
I also I think that that's one of the values of things like individual GPTs that you can build. So I have some that are for my SEO business, and I have one just for helping me create some social content for my book account. I also have one to run a D&D campaign that I am the DM for. And part of why that's so helpful is I can use it, and I fed it all of the for anybody listening who hasn't set up a GPT, which is worthwhile, I, added a bunch of like PDFs that had to do with like the context of my campaign and all of that stuff. And so once I open up that GPT, it knows to use the context I already have and like what I've already fed it. And so it's a lot easier to then give it shorter prompts. Like if I'm in a hurry, it understands what I mean anyway.
But what's happening under the hood for anybody that's not getting it is you've already provided all that context with what you've uploaded, the system prompt, all the rest of the things you gave it, so you can be short with it. But for a general interaction with an LLM, it doesn't have all the context. You have to give it context. It's been probably the last 2 or so years that the idea of prompt engineering has come along. And in general, the longer your prompt, the more accurate and probably closer to what you were really asking for your response tends to be. But also remember, we're talking about a system that operates in the space between 0 and 1. And so it does still do the weird thing every once in a while.
Yep. On occasion.
So you had briefly talked about the fact that you wanted to build a tool that would do things that current brain-dead AI SEO tools don't do well, right?
Yeah.
I don't want you to give away some sort of proprietary piece that I want you to keep for your product. I'm not trying to take something from you, but what is the chasm there between what a human does and what these tools are trying to do that we want to fix? What's the glitch?
I think that so far the tools that are available on the market basically do the same thing in saying, hey, here are 40 terms that you should use because Google recognizes these. It seems that these terms are shared between the search results for any given prompt that you give it. So like if I'm searching for like how to apply to medical school, for instance, there's going to be a bunch of different things about, osteopathic doctors versus medical doctors, allopathic medicine. So there's like words that'll come up that they're not in the phrase how to apply to medical school, but they're related. And so that's fine. And a lot of the tools, the rest of what they do is like, hey, here's who's ranking at the top, which is again, you don't need AI for that. And then here are some like questions and common citations used. So I think that there's just such a gap between what they provide and then what I pay editors to create like content briefs for, in the sense of like my editors, for instance, have to take the list of questions that they pull because the tools currently now, they don't reformat the questions. They don't have anything that's like looking at the list and saying, okay, how do you which of these are duplicate questions? Which of these are actually relevant to this specific question versus what just happens to pop up on the search engine results page or SERP, like when you search for something. So there's some of that stuff that I want to duplicate what my human editors are doing that honestly we use AI for some anyway. So like I have a GPT set up to plug in, here's the 20 questions that whatever tool gave me and said, oh, these are relevant to the topic. And then I say, here's the actual topic. Can you clean up the questions, like fix the typos and grammatical errors, eliminate duplicates, and eliminate anything that's just tangentially related? Like it's not really that close, to what we're trying to do.
Is it within your skill set today to implement that and write all that for yourself, or is that kind of where you're sort of stuck at the moment?
So here's the thing about my skill set. I learn really fast. So I'm kind of like trying to determine how to put my time because once I decide to learn it, I could. Like I at one point wanted to learn like app coding and things like that. And I started to get into it and it was a lot. And I thought, okay, I just have a limited amount of time and this is not a good way to use it. So I'm kind of at this point where I have the idea and I actually set up a brand name and like grabbed the website. Like I own the URL and stuff just in case.
I'm so shocked you own a URL. An
yeah,
SEO person who gets the URL.
I own a lot of URLs. I don't own a lot compared to a lot of people in my industry, but I am probably at the point where I could learn how to create it myself, but I don't know if it's a good use of my time. And so I may prefer like hiring somebody and like partnering up because I think that I do a lot better when I'm given something that I can take and then edit rather than having to do everything from scratch. Like I'm good at coming up with the idea and I'm good at looking at it. Like one of my like random skills that I've never really used that much professionally with a few exceptions is I'm great at like looking in an app and being like, okay, here are the 12,000 things that you need to change. Here's how to make the UI better. This menu thing needs to move here. You don't explain this properly. This is confusing. Fix, like, I'm great at like UX and UI. But I don't really use it a lot in my regular job. But I think that would be where I would shine more than trying to learn it from scratch, which is honestly, I don't know who would be the best person to just say, hey, can you help me build this? Which is why that project stalled. But
I think you have a couple options there. It's going to depend a little bit on whether you really want to dive in and get sort of sucked into the world of wrangling code. You could do the vibe coding approach. Are you familiar with Cursor?
no, I've heard a little bit about vibe coding and what people mean, but just tell me like I don't know anything.
Sure. And there's a catch-22 in this, and I coming from a massive development background, it's hard for me to just go, yeah, sure. But at the same time, sometimes it's the right answer. So I kind of waffle back and forth with whether I suggest it or I don't suggest it. But the general idea is you use one of the AI-assisted coding tools. So Cursor, Windsurf, there's many. Claude Code, doesn't matter. There's plenty. Where you're prompting the LLM, in this particular case, you're prompting models specifically designed to do coding. And for anyone wondering why an AI would be really good at coding, and in fact, why one of the massive use cases are out there for coding is AI use, coding is just language.
Yeah.
Language models do language really, 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 really well.
It's almost like it's what they're designed for.
Right. So if the idea behind writing code is a sequence of words in a certain pattern that actually make this thing happen, an LLM can learn that and repeat it pretty well. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but that's another conversation. So what a vibe coding session is, you just sit and prompt away. I'd like an application that can do this. Can you build me the basic framework? Brrr, all sorts of stuff scrolls by on the screen. You're like, I wonder what that means, because you don't know. And then you say, how do I test this? And it says, just type this. Bing, bang, boom. And in a browser, you've got a thing, and you're like, I wrote an app, which technically you did. Shipping that is a whole nother scenario, but that's right. I'll say this, though. I would actually recommend, because of where you are in the world and what your skill set is today, I would tell you that you should pick up one of these tools and vibe code for a weekend and build something that works on Rebekah's computer only, that looks cool and does the things you want, and hand that to a developer and say, here's a POC, now make this real.
Yeah.
And they don't necessarily have to use your code, but they could see the inspiration and, oh, okay, I know what you. So rather than trying to define that in like a requirements document, old school, hey, the 90s called, you're giving them a functioning app, and you're saying to them, I don't think this should be shipped. I think this shows you what I want. But also, you get to be exposed to something completely new and different. It could be fun.
Which I enjoy a lot.
Right? And there is a way for you to turn those into real apps in a lot of ways. But if you just got your feet wet with what we're talking about, I think you'd find it entertaining. And then you go, all right, I just need somebody who can turn this into something real. And the first thing you can do is you can send me an email, and I'll try and find someone to help you. But you can also go to Upwork, you can go to Fiverr, whatever, and you can, and like $250, see if someone makes your app and it works or doesn't work. And then you can decide, well, I know how to SEO this bad boy. I'm going to go sell it and whatever. And you do your thing. But I see no reason not to. Like, there's no harm, no foul. If it doesn't work, delete it.
Yeah, it's like the test, doesn't cost me a whole lot other than just a little bit of time and maybe a small budget. But like I think I paused because I thought, oh, well, I got a little tripped up in whether or not it was like worth the time. But now that I've seen what a lot of people are creating for like SEO apps with AI, I'm like, they're all the same and they all have the same issues. And it's, I want to fix that. The other thing, here's the other thing, because I had this idea that would be the writing assistant kind of deal. But now that I've seen what our clients are just coming to us and asking for, I have like 5 SEO apps that I'm trying to look for based on a deep research search, by the way. I have these 5 or 6 different ones that I'm looking at that are supposed to help brands understand, the sentiment analysis of how different chat bots like talk about their brand and if
Right.
they show up in the searches for all of this stuff. And like I said, all of them are bad. Like I'm so sorry if anyone listening to this is part of building them, but like please ask me how to make them better because they're not good. Like they're not worth the financial investment. I actually had a client that was like, "Hey, can you try this? Like it looks so good." We had this call with them and they were really excited about how this could show us how to improve how we show up in ChatGPT and da da da. And before I had the chance to rewatch the meeting link that he sent me an email and he goes, it's just basically the same as like all the other SEO tools and like it's not giving us as helpful as of advice as you already give us because this is not related to creating an app, but I will give my little spiel that I give all of my clients. Like everyone needs to hear this, that ever wants to invest in SEO and is going to ask all the questions about how do I show up in ChatGPT. That's what everybody's question is. You show up in ChatGPT by doing the same things that are for good, sustainable SEO, not like gimmicky SEO, which is there's a lot of like weird little things you can do. People can, build you a backlink farm and you might
Right.
work, it works for a month or whatever. But
Yeah,
if you
they're
want to build
short-term
a
hacks.
exactly. If you want to build a sustainable brand, all the advice I've been giving to clients for the last 6 years is what means that a lot of them already show up in a lot of these searches, which is like you create good content, you answer your audience questions, you have active presence on social media, you do PR, like you do the things, the schema on your website set up. Like there's some basics obviously that are like with that. But anyway, it's a lot for people to just, they think that we have these like fake, like these answers that are so mysterious. And I'm like, it's not a black box. Like just do the same things.
There's a comment in here I want to throw at you that is a little off kilter.
I'm here for it.
There's actually a bit of a vibe in the AI community, at least at the moment, that searching is probably being downplayed in a lot of people's minds because a lot of people are just using the LLM. And there's a thing, are you familiar with the concept of Model Context Protocol?
No.
MCP? Okay. Well, strap in.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're going to go for a ride. This is a very interesting potential future that is driven by agents and the functionality that MCP provides. And without boring the audience too late, Jeff. MCP is a protocol that lets an LLM or an agent communicate with a back-end server of something. In the old school methodology, which means, before November of last year when Anthropic released MCP, you would use an API to talk to a thing. And from a developer, the problem with an API is I have to look at the list of application programming interfaces. I have to see which ones I want to use. And then there's a signature for each one. If I had an endpoint that said add 3 numbers, when I called that endpoint, it would ask me for number 1, number 2, number 3. Those are parameters. I have to write my code to understand that I need to provide those 3 parameters, et cetera, et cetera. In order to consume an API, I have to spend a lot of time and effort. And if you change your API, I have to make a change. MCP gets rid of all of that by using a technology called reflection, which says the LLM gets a list of tools. Those tools are MCP servers and the functionality the MCP servers support. So let's say I have an MCP server that's a math server, and it has a tool. The tool's called add 3 numbers. As the LLM consuming the MCP server, this will make sense when I give you a real example. Right now, everybody's lost. It's okay. I'll get there.
It's okay. I think I'm following.
The LLM says, hey, you're the MCP server that has the tool that lets me add 3 numbers. How do I use that tool? And the MCP server says, you got to give me 3 parameters. Here's the parameters. And the LLM, which is exemplary at language, says, I know what those words mean, and gathers the 3 parameters. It's probably been given from the prompt by the user, and then sends them to the MCP server, and back comes the answer. Now, I made a simple example because I wanted people to grasp it. but follow me along on the journey here, Dorothy. You ready?
Ready.
I'm obviously playing Rebecca. If I have an MCP server for Amazon and Best Buy and Walmart and Target, and those are all sitting in my chat, and I say, find me the best price for Crest toothpaste, this size, this flavor, and buy it, I'm not going to those websites ever again.
Yep.
And I don't care about the SEO. Because in an agentic future where all the interactions are happening inside my chat of choice, and that chat can be, you want to use Copilot? Go for it. You want to use Claude? Great. It doesn't matter, right? You found a vendor that's out of Southeast Asia that's really, really inexpensive, and they monetize off of your data, and you don't care, and great. It doesn't matter, right? Chat's a chat. Okay. With the advent of agents and MCP and the ability to do things like, this is a simple example, but please search for the top 5 electric vehicles under $40,000 on sale in the United States as of June 2025. Summarize that list into a table and send it into my Slack account. Here's my name. That's what MCP can do. I use it every day.
Yeah.
And
sounds like a pretty magical future.
It is. And what it does is it sort of shifts the dynamic of people aren't going to search anywhere near as much as they used to, right? Now, the question that I think is interesting in the sequence that you had there was people are asking, how do I show up in ChatGPT? And obviously today's answer is, well, ChatGPT effectively crawls the web, indexes, it trains, and spits out answers.
Sure.
So however you show up today in Google search results is how you're going to continue to show up. And like your answer's spot on. And of course it's spot on. It's reality, right? You're not guessing. It's exactly the answer. But I think the future, that answer changes a little bit. And I think from my point of view, what I would want Rebecca to hear is SEO is going to change and modify. And so how do you stay on that curve? I need to get you playing with MCP and get you understanding how that works and whether there's a way to do ranking from an MCP perspective in the future and be a cool place for you to go mine.
Yeah, it sounds like it's fascinating. And I think from a broad perspective, I know everyone knows that SEO is changing. So like no one is like unaware of that, I think, in the industry. And will I be doing this 15 years from now? I don't know. Like, I don't know if this is something that I'm going to be interested in doing, even in the very different version of it that'll be 15 years from now.
15 years from now, you'll have a series of books that you're very happy with. You're not going to worry about SEO.
You know what? I hope so.
I don't see any reason why not.
I think that in the idea that you like postulate there, I would love to think about how that works for the customers we work for. I think that the time is probably going to be going away where you can just monetize a site with ads, and like that's the way that you'll make money for a long time, because people won't be going to your website for things like recipes or, I don't know, workouts, makeup tutorials, stuff like that. I mean, I think people will still engage with that type of content, but it'll probably just continue to look a lot different as each decade passes. I do think that some of the benefit of like building a brand in terms of having good reviews for a product, having a product that's competitively priced, having a product that maybe stands out in a way that people want. So like one of our clients, for instance, has a toothpaste, which, you mentioned toothpaste. They do a toothpaste that specifically helps to like build your oral microbiome to help with gum disease and stuff.
Okay. I got you.
I think that if you can focus on making your product something that people actually want and would like search for lack of a better term, even if it's something where they may never see your site and they're just going to find you through this whole MCP idea and like it just like will show up at your door, I think if you create a good product, you'll still create brand loyalty. I do think a lot of brands are going to have to figure out how to pivot from their current process of what they do. I will also say that this is another thing that I'm not sure what it looks like, because obviously I can't predict the future. People that work in AI think that people use AI a lot more than they do.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's probably like just, a logical fallacy that's really common, because I have I never carry more than 12 clients. Like, I'm big on keeping my agency pretty boutique. So
Okay.
right now, I have 2 clients I'm working with that got hit in some Google updates where they lost a lot of traffic and it was just like really bad. They're up and down, like more up now that they're working with us, but it's still kind of like a hit and miss. And I'm trying to think, I have one client that has steadily been on the decline because their content area is something that was really trendy when they started and it's just not as trendy anymore. Like, fewer people search for it. Every other person on my roster in the last 6 months has increased their traffic by quite a lot than it was before, which means obviously it means I'm doing my job. But I think it speaks to the fact that, you know, people are still using Google because that's really the only thing I'm tracking to say that their traffic is better. Obviously there's ways to look at like how people get to your site without Google search, but I'm talking about looking at people that go onto Google, search for something, and they find this client. And in at least one case I can think of, they're stealing market share from like their industry who are actually losing search traffic. I don't know. I think that a lot more people still use Google. I think that the adoption of AI has a lot, obviously early adopters and people like me who are like, oh my gosh, I'm going to jump on this and pay for premium as soon as it comes out. Like I wanted to like know everything that's happening. I think I signed up for ChatGPT the day that it came out or something like to the public. So
Yeah.
I'm a beta tester for a lot of random things like that too. So early adopters obviously are going to hop all over it. But I think that AI also comes with so many more ethical concerns and also like fear. Like there's a lot of fear around AI. There's been a lot of like fictional content around what happens when AI is doing too much that I think that it has kind of gotten into the psyche as a whole, like as a culture, that I think that the adoption is going to be slower for people who haven't already jumped on the train because of like all of those things in the background too. So
No, I actually agree. And honestly, inside the AI bubble, which is where I'm sitting, of course, it's like how foolish of you to search Google. But in the real world, it's turning a battleship, right? It takes time for people to make significant changes like that. And there's an adoption curve model that you can find out there that talks about how long that typically takes for different technologies, et cetera. Even though ChatGPT broke the model, or at least the historical records with respect to fastest adoption rate, that doesn't tell the whole story because, fastest to 300 million users is a cool statistic, but how many are still using it? How many are using it today, daily, hourly? And I don't need to know those numbers. My point is simply lots and lots of curiosity, lots of hype, and then some folks were like, well, what am I doing with this? I can't do anything with this,
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's something that got so much better every single time they've released a new model or new features that if you used it in the first like early days and you were like, this kind of sucks for what I was trying to use it for, and then don't try it again, you don't realize how much better it could even be.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I concur that there's an adoption curve and that adoption curve is not instantaneous use today.
Yeah. I'm not convinced it's going to follow other adoption curves for different technology either, though, because I think there is a unique aspect to it. I mean, this is just my theoretical guesses, but I think that there's so much around it that's different than what we've kind of had in the past that I think it might be a lot slower on the other end of the curve. Like it was a lot faster up front because of the excited, it's very cool, but
what it's going to come down to is use cases because the early adopters are all about, oh, wow, cool technology, innovation, gizmo, great. But that's not how you get sustainability, and that's not how you get growth. What you need are use cases. And what you're going to find, and you're already seeing this, is applications that stack on top of the underlying concept of large language models are where the use cases are going to penetrate the market versus just using, okay, you go to ChatGPT, you type in a question, you get an answer. How many times do you need to do that every day? If your job is not that exactly, right?
Right.
But, inside of your email client, having the response summarizing the conversation, in your voice, the way you typically respond to email, ready for you to click approve. That's a use case. And now people will either decide they like it or don't. And if that's creepy, I understand. But my point is, that's sitting on top of large language model, and that's
Right.
now bringing a value. And that's the level of adoption that needs to happen in order for us to say, oh, AI penetration, whatever. I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying what you're saying in a different way, but it's the same thing, right? Because do I really need to go chat every second? Like, there's a novelty, but I'm kind of, okay, good, thanks.
Like, I use ChatGPT as my default search engine, and I work in SEO and use Google every day, but I prefer using it for search. But yeah, there's definitely a limited number of times I have seen, like, this is so random, but the first thing that comes to mind when you're talking about like applications on top that I really want to see, I am the person that's like, hey, give me the fridge that can look at what I have in my fridge and tell me what to make, and then can tell me what to grocery shop for. You know what I mean? Like, I love that kind of thing that becomes really day-to-day practical. But again, I'm curious to see how people pick up on those things. We're already having, like, my husband and I do some like church ministry stuff with a bunch of teenagers. And what we're encountering with them is that they use ChatGPT or, the tools on their phone, whether it's ChatGPT or not, to like rewrite things and make them sound better. But now I don't know if I'm talking to them for real. So we're like having this issue where I have to like go and talk to a kid and be like, hey, I asked you a serious question and your response was clearly AI edited or written. I don't know. But now I need to know if that was you or if that was a computer making up an answer for you. And so I think we're like discouraging some use of it, or like trying to like educate, especially younger people in the context that we have on, hey, here's how to do this in a way that doesn't like, it's not icky. Like, I don't know how else to say it, like in a way that's still
There's definitely going to be a learning curve for society on, and I think that actually happens with everything. Think about the curve of smoking in the United States in 100-year window.
Yep.
Where at one point in the 30s and 40s, it was weird if you didn't smoke.
Right.
Like, just weird. And then you get through the 80s into the 90s, and it's weird if you smoke.
Yeah.
And then vapes and everything else starts to change that dynamic a little bit, and that's driven by companies desperately trying to continue to sell the addictive product. We won't talk about it. But
I have a question for you.
Yeah, fire.
This reminded me of it. So I watched a speech that Elon Musk gave, I don't know, earlier this year. And he talked about his theory, which obviously it's a theory just like anybody else's. His theory is, he's like, I think that, 50 years from now, 5% of intelligence used like in the day-to-day marketplace will be human, and the rest of it will be artificial. And I'm curious what you think, like, and I mean, again, this is all theory and projection, but what do you think realistically, like, once society has a chance to adjust to it and people are born into a world with just AI as part of everything, do you think that it'll become a world where we're content to let, most of the intelligence operating be not ours?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a great way for us to close out. So here's what I'll tell you. It's going to be a longer answer, but I'll give you as much as I can. The first thing I'll tell you is Elon Musk is a huge fan of the Culture series. And I know that for a couple very, very key reasons, but I guarantee you that is a true statement. And in the Culture, there's no such thing as jobs. You don't work. That's what AI does. You do what you want to do that day, that week, etc. Now, I know this is sci-fi, and I'm not suggesting that that's our future in 50 years. What I'm trying to say to you is, the current society exists around this model of, in order to be valuable, you must produce something, do something. Your
Create
output
value
must
first,
be,
yeah.
Exactly. Your output is monetized in some form or fashion for just about everybody. Not 100%, but you know what I mean. Okay, but how much of that, being very direct for a minute, is busy work?
Yeah.
I don't think it's 50%. But I think that there's a decent number of jobs that, if we weren't looking at it from the perspective of how's that person feed themselves, which we need to solve, and I'm not suggesting we don't, but if society decides, the AI is so much better at this, and it's improved to the point where it's not worth our time to do, then we move on. This is a simple example. I've used it on the podcast a couple times. I'll just give you the mental idea around it, right? We don't have elevator operators anymore. We have AI. It's called a button. You click the button and the computer, I'm making it up, but you know what I'm saying, takes you to the floor instead of a person closing the door and pushing the button for you. Literally, that job was a button pusher. Okay, we don't need that anymore. Those folks, I hope, had some other way of earning an income, or they learned some new trade or whatever. Okay, let's talk about it this way. In the first instance of the word computer, that described a female who was excellent at math. The reason the phrase digital computer exists is because it was a digital implementation of what a human did. And I know you got to be old enough to really get all of that. But the point, and I'm not trying to make the fact that they were all women is a function of society in the 40s and 50s. It's just reality now. But there are plenty of jobs we have today that we might look at in 20 years and go, why did we have people doing that? The machine is so much better at it.
Yeah.
But I think society needs to also think about, there were, in the last election series, there was conversations about something called universal basic income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Conceptually, just so we close the loop, right? The culture doesn't also really have money necessarily. Just things are just provided and you do what you're going to do or whatever. And people have jobs. You still work at stuff, but not because you can't eat or function or anything else. It's because that's the pastime that you've decided to pursue and, whatever. Yeah. My opinion is society is heading towards a pretty interesting shift. Bit like a tectonic plate running into another tectonic plate, a pretty significant shift. And that shift will be redefining things like work and value and income. And you're not going to get rid of the idea that you pay for things. And you're not going to get rid of the idea that companies charge for things. But maybe the concept is you do things that are unique, and we'll just take from your perspective, creating content and monetizing content. You could have an AI assistant that you've built, designed, or prompted, right? A GPT, for lack of a better word today, that helps you create content. But maybe what you're doing is you're creating, let's think about it this way. You're creating a serial, the way the original Martian was written. And you're not creating a book that takes 6 months or something. You're putting out content every week. And people are paying for that, subscribing for that, etc. Right? And so that's one way that you could be doing something valuable. And you're either inventing something or you're having commentary. And I actually think what we end up with is more individuality in the future. And people working on things that are intriguing and that are energizing instead of, my job is to go to the building over here and file papers and use a stapler, and they pay me for it. And so it's a cool job and everything, but it's not mentally stimulating, and I don't feel fulfilled. And then you ask that person, well, what do you do in your spare time? And they're like, oh, I paint miniatures or something. And you go, that's so creative. That should be the thing you do. And but I can't eat. I can't buy cat food, whatever. So there's a societal shift that probably needs to happen in order for that to be the case. But there's no reason that AI can't do a lot of the things that I currently think are not exceptionally valuable.
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting perspective. I'm not in any way anti-capitalist. I'm a big fan of the way that capitalism can work to reward people for working hard and being innovative. But I do think that in a world where intelligence is primarily artificial in terms of the kind of mundane things we do, I wonder how much of that is going to be sustainable into the future. And maybe it will, and maybe we just don't see how yet or whatever. I don't know. But it's an interesting topic, and I think the thing that worries me is I think people that already kind of don't live motivated to do anything that fills them with joy or, intrigues them or anything. It concerns me to wonder if we'll just be creating more of that or heading more towards the idiocracy side of things. I don't know how much faith I have in people to like to want to do those things, if that makes sense. But
yeah, the only thing I'll say, my only closing comment on that one is simply Hollywood only has two modes, right? Utopia or dystopia. They don't sell reality because no one wants to watch reality. Everyone lives it every day. But it's unlikely that Hollywood's image of either utopia or dystopia is accurate. But, you don't make money selling tickets on the center. You sell it on the extremes.
yeah, true.
Doesn't mean I'm right either, just as another opinion,
No, I think
by
it's
the way.
fascinating.
All right. Well, I think we had a fantastic conversation.